This video is about properties of angle bisectors, medians, and altitudes. So an angle bisector is something we've seen before. Remember that an angle bisector is a ray that divides an angle into two congruent angles. So in this case, we have two congruent angles marked here. So the ray that's in between the sides of my angle, down the middle, would be my angle bisector. We have two theorems that also go along with this. The angle bisector theorem: if a point is on the angle bisector, then it is equidistant, which means equal distant from the side of the angle. So if I have a point somewhere on this and I draw a segment to the sides of my angle, they're going to be equal distance away from the angle bisector. The reverse works too. So if the point is on the interior of angle and is equidistant from the sides of an angle, then it is on the angle bisector. So let's use these theorems to solve for a variable. In number 1, we want to find the measure of angle TRY. So we see that these two segments were marked congruent, which means that A is a point that's equidistant from the side, so AR is an angle bisector. Now that we know that angle A, or ray AR, is an angle bisector, our two angles are congruent to each other. So we have 3A plus 20 is equal to 2A plus 26. So I can solve for A by getting my variable on one side and my constant on the other. So I have A is equal to 6. If I need to find the measure of TRY, I'm going to substitute 6 in for both angles. So I'm going to substitute 3 times 6 plus 20 gets me 38 degrees, and 2 times 6 plus 26 also gets me 38 degrees, which makes sense that both angles are 38 degrees because we have an angle bisector. So the measure of angle TRY then is equal to 38 plus 38, which is a measure of 76 degrees. In number 2, we have this large triangle JWS, and we are told that SA is an angle bisector. So we know that in a triangle, so in my blue triangle, that all the angles together equal 180. So I can find the measure of my missing angle by subtracting the two angles I know. So when I subtract the two angles I know, I get that my large angle down here is 64 degrees. Now, I know that this is an angle bisector, so I can split that angle into two congruent angles that both have a measure of 32 degrees. So 32 degrees and 32 degrees. Then I can solve for x. 5x plus 2 is equal to 32. Subtract 2 from both sides. 5x equals 30. When I divide, I get x is 6. A new term that we're going to look at today is called a median. A median is a segment that has to be drawn from the vertex. It's important to note that it must be drawn from the vertex of a triangle to the midpoint of the opposite side. So B would be my vertex, D is my midpoint. Remember that a midpoint bisects a segment into two congruent parts, so AD is now congruent to CD. So let's use this idea to solve for a variable. So in number 3, AD is a median, so D is my midpoint, which bisects the side BC. The two important expressions that I want to look at are the 6x minus 9 and the 2x plus 23, because those represent segments. This angle I want to ignore for now because I don't know anything about the angle in a median. So I'm going to use the highlighted segments to solve for x. So 6x minus 9 equals 2x plus 23. So when I solve, I get 4x equals 32 and divide, so x is 8. In number 4, our S is a median. So again, S is my midpoint, which means it's bisecting the side SU and TS. So again, I can set my two segments congruent to each other. 7y minus 7 is equal to 3y plus 29. So I'm going to get my variable to one side and my constant to the other. 4y is equal to 36. Divide by 4, so y is equal to 9. The last new vocab word that we are going to look at is an altitude. An altitude is a segment that's drawn from a vertex and is perpendicular to the opposite side. Sometimes altitudes can be drawn outside a triangle. So if I had my triangle here, my altitude would be outside the triangle. But they're most useful when they are inside a triangle. So either way, an altitude is perpendicular, which means a right angle is formed at the intersection point. So let's use that idea to solve for a variable. So in these two problems, we now are looking at the angle, because the angle is what we know something's happening at. So we know here, by EGH, that it's a right angle because it's perpendicular, because EG is my altitude. So I know that this is 90 degrees, so 6z is equal to 90. When I divide by 6, I get that z is 15. In number 4, PR is an altitude. So at R, we have right angles form. So 8w plus 18 is equal to 90. So we have 8w then is equal to 72. When I divide, w is equal to 9. In both of these problems, I don't know anything about my side length, so I'm just going to leave them alone.